Before we start, if you are interested in buying a physical book, please fill out the interest form in the description when the video is done. But if you're interested in buying a digital book, then you've got some options. The book is available digitally, and I'm happy to announce that there's a bundle available with 3 Touhou ebooks and an album. More info at the end of the video. Also, this entire video avoids major spoilers for the book until the very end. I'll notify you when that happens. Let's make the world of dreams into reality. Those are the words Renko says to her partner Mary, and can be used to describe Touhou as a whole. Gensokyo is a place where dreams can become a reality. So, I wanted to capture that idea in a book. That's where I got the title of my second book, Dreams into Reality. With my first book, Violet Origins, I wrote something heavily tied to Touhou lore, which is fun and has its place. But with my new book, I wanted to write a story that could be enjoyed by both new Touhou fans and veteran Touhou fans. My mantra was this: I want to make a Touhou book my mom can enjoy. But how could I do that while at the same time display Touhou's main appeal? Enter the origin story. Origin stories in Touhou have a unique advantage. We don't know most of them. We get introduced to Touhou characters often with little snippets of pre-fight dialogue, but these usually aren't their actual origins. A character's origins are often relegated to supplemental text in the game's OMIC, or put into a databook. So, by telling origin stories, I had a unique opportunity to tell new stories to veteran fans, but also have a place to introduce important characters and concepts naturally to new fans. But then, there was Gensokyo itself. How do I describe that without feeling overbearing? Well, for that, I took influence from one of my favorite books. East of Eden has these grand descriptions that are detached from the plot at the start of chapters. But though detached, they are of vital importance to the book itself. They can be sweeping descriptions of Central California, or contemplations on the nature of evil. They set the stage for the actual story to come. So, before each one of my stories, I have my own descriptions, told almost like they're Greek myths. It's just one page talking about the Hakure Shrine Maiden, or the state of the moon, and then bam, you're in the story. But then, we have the stories themselves. For my first story, I have the Flying Shrine Maiden. Each story in my book is named after a Touhou song, and the Flying Shrine Maiden is the most literal one. We meet Reimu as a kid back in her classic design. After fighting Ellis during Touhou 1, she becomes enamored with the idea of flying on her own. It's a very wondrous and innocent dream, but this is Gensokyo. This type of dream can come true. I've heard this section compared to a Saturday morning cartoon, or a bedtime story, and that is very much intentional. But there was one main point I wanted to emphasize in it: the friendship between Reimu and Marissa. Reimu and Marissa being contrasting protagonists who get along so well is one of the core parts of Touhou, and part of its main appeal. If this book is gonna be somebody's intro point, then I wanted that to be their first impression. So in the story, you get to see Reimu and Marissa meet, and how their fast friendship develops. And I was actually in the right time of my life to write this. I've been teaching chess to elementary schoolers for 2 years now, so I understand how children act, and how they become friends. In Tenko's review of my book, he thought my characterization of Reimu and Marissa as kids was spot on, and I think my experience teaching is why. There was one scene I absolutely needed to get right, and I think I did. Reimu and Marissa play tag together, and I feel like I captured it perfectly. The playful innocence of the girls, skirting around the rules to get an advantage, and just the general sense of fun. It's a great game. So, that was a lot of my thought process behind writing the Flying Shrine Maiden. But trust me, there's a lot more for you to discover if you read the book. I only mentioned 3 characters. There's 2 more familiar faces to meet in the story. The second story in the book is Invisible Full Moon, and it stars the rabbit who would become known as Reisen Udongen Inaba. While Flying Shrine Maiden aimed to show something a bit specific with Reimu and Marissa's bond, my goal with Invisible Full Moon was slightly more broad. I wanted to demonstrate how mythology in Touhou can be remixed and modernized. I did this with Reisen because I think she's Touhou's emotional heart. When explaining the moon, it was important to balance things just right. I didn't mention the Apollo missions causing Reisen to run explicitly, because out of context, that sounds kind of silly. But I do mention an attack on the moon and explain the origins of Princess Kaguya. A new fan would get to see how these old myths of rabbits on the moon can be remixed to create brand new stories. Now, I was inspired by East of Eden for the book, but that's not the only place I got ideas. Have you ever heard of the great storytelling achievement of Pokemon Battle Dimension? If you know the Sinnoh anime, then you know how important Ash's Chimchar is. Originally belonging to his rival Paul, Chimchar ends up becoming the heart of the rivalry. Paul abandons Chimchar for being too weak in his eyes, and Ash, without hesitation, immediately takes him in. The episode Tears for Fears happens very soon after Ash takes in Chimchar, and we see Chimchar struggle to get used to Ash. He doesn't understand what it's like to have a loving family, and struggles to move past prior abuse. It's a beautiful story, and one I kept in the back of my mind while writing Invisible Full Moon. Udongain has been a soldier all her life in a society that views rabbits as disposable. In Touhou, we see how fast it is for rabbits like Seiran and Ringo to leave their posts. But Udongain was the first rabbit to do so. Going to Gensokyo is an entirely different world. But importantly, she's not alone. Whether it be fellow defector Avine or Earth Rabbit Tay, Udongain has the support she needs to adjust to Earth. Writing this story helps put into perspective how beautiful the world is. Simple things like a bright blue sky and vibrant plants. Udongain gets to discover these things for the first time. Gensokyo offers a very earnest world, and serves as Udongain's place to grow past trauma. I've been told this is the best story in the book, and I think I agree. Invisible Full Moon manages to be emotional and light, and still tackles some heavy subject matter. The ending might be my favorite parts, but I'll leave that for you to find. The last story was one I struggled to settle on. I thought about Nitori learning to make machines, or Momiji playing shogi, but I ended up on a story about one of my favorite Touhou characters, Raiko. The third story, Pristine Beat, tells the story of how Raiko came to life, and an important week she had with her guardian. The point I wanted to show here was the unique relationships that can form between humans and yokai. Pristine Beat is the only story that features an original character, Betty. A human drummer with a kind heart and relaxed attitude, she's more than willing to raise her little drum into a beautiful yokai. We get to see how she teaches and loves Raiko, with a few of the unique eccentricities that come with it. But Betty and Raiko aren't the only characters here. Another major player is Rinanosuke. Something many don't know is that Rinanosuke is half human and half yokai. We never get to learn about his parents in actual Touhou, so I was eager to finally explore this thread a bit in my story. Raiko comes face to face with an important difference between humans and yokai that I will not spoil, and Rinanosuke is there to help her understand the process. This was the hardest story for me to write, but I ended up being pretty happy with it. As for what Raiko and Rinanosuke talk about, all I'll say is I watched the movie The Sheep Detectives while writing the story, and that film profoundly moved me. Okay, now for spoilers. Skip to the time skip on screen to avoid me talking about the ending. On day 2 of Touhou Fest, somebody came up to my table because they'd already finished reading the book. They told me that their favorite part was the ending. Epilogue. Prologue. I lied at the start. This is the only part of the book that isn't named after a Touhou song. In the first story, there's a brief paragraph about a woman creating Gensokyo. To close the book, we see this bit expanded. There's a woman, and she goes unnamed. You can't quite tell if it's supposed to be Mary or Yukari. Perhaps naively, she ventures back in time to create her dream world. As she tries though, she meets a little friend, a fox trapped under a branch. And after saving it, the fox loyally follows her. The woman makes portals, and the fox has 9 tails. The woman wants to make her dreams into reality. She wants to make Gensokyo. We get to see the start of that journey, but that's it. Gensokyo sprang from a woman's desire to make her dream into reality. And by creating it, she helped others make their dreams into reality. This was not an ending I planned from the start, but as I dabbled in expanding Gensokyo's origins, I felt it served as a nice bookend. The simple act of kindness to save the fox, I think, hits at what I love about Gensokyo. Yes, you have some grim stories, both in lore and in canon, but there's also a lot of earnest sincerity about people living their lives as themselves, and that's beautiful. Dreams into Reality aims to condense a lot of what I love about Touhou into one book in a way understandable to a complete newcomer. Despite this slant for newcomers though, I don't know if I've ever written a love letter to the series more passionate than this. If you choose to pick up a copy, then I hope you enjoy reading it as much as I enjoyed writing it. Thanks for watching. Before I go, I wanted to talk a bit more about that bundle. The Touhou Dream-Filled Books and Music Bundle gets you 2 of my books, Dreams into Reality and my Sumireiko book from last year, Violet Origins. It also gets you my friend's book, High Flyin' Marissa. Marissa learns to fly like a plane and tries to take down Reimu. It's a lot more action-y than my books. Additionally, you get the album Violet Origins, the album. This can be listened to with my Sumireiko book like a Touhou music CD. Each song goes with a certain chapter. You can get all of this for $19. But, if you just want to buy Dreams into Reality on its own, you can do that too. And again, if you want a physical copy, please fill out the interest form. I'll have links to everything in the description. But again, thanks for watching.